He's the king of legitimate questions, ESPN MMA reporter Marc Raimondi. Marc, we have a quartet of questions that I feel are legitimate. And among them is finding a legitimate challenger for either Valentina Shevchenko or Amanda Nunes in their respective weight classes. We know they have fought twice before. We know Nunes got the best of Shevchenko twice before. It seems like we are barreling toward yet another super fight between these two. Legitimate question from me to you. How close do you think we are to that actually happening?
Maybe not as close as we should be, Phil. That's a very good question. I would even say it's a legitimate question. But when UFC President Dana White was asked about this recently, he said that he really isn't looking at that fight. It's not on his radar. Nunes has already won twice. But I respectfully disagree. I mean, not that she won twice. We know that she won twice. But I think that a third fight is very, very sellable and bankable for the UFC. We're talking about two women in two different divisions who have basically cleaned out the contenders. There's not a whole lot left for either Nunes or Shevchenko to do in their respective division. And if you remember that last fight between the two of them at UFC 215, it was very, very, very close. And some people even thought that Shevchenko won that fight by decision, or at least should have won that fight by decision. Of course, Nunes did get the nod. But to me, it's one of the biggest fights, if not the biggest fight on the women's side that the UFC can do right now. And I'm surprised that the UFC is not taking a long, hard look at that at this very moment. But it seems like both of them are going to have other contenders in their respective divisions, but maybe the end of 2021, maybe beginning of 2022. I hope to see that fight at some point because they are very much the two best female fighters in the world right now, for my money. And why wouldn't you want to do that fight again? Run that one back.
Yeah, I agree. The second fight was close, not controversial. It wasn't the most entertaining fight, but Shevchenko, to me, has improved more in the interim. So there's added intrigue to run that back a third time if it happens. Marc, we are looking for a Roman numeral 1 next to a certain fight in the heavyweight division. Still waiting for Jon Jones to make his heavyweight debut. Francis Ngannou, Jon Jones was a ready-made functional super fight. I know Jon had already given up his belt. Marc, what is the likelihood that this fight ever comes together?
Well, this is the second question you're asking me about fights that I really hope happens. And I don't know if there's a fight on in the UFC right now that I want to see more than Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones. We're talking about Ngannou, maybe the scariest fighter in UFC history, the most dangerous puncher in the history of the sport, against Jon Jones, the best fighter in the history of the sport. It sells itself. You can put that on pay-per-view this weekend, and it would do very, very well with no promotion at all. It's an incredible fight. When is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? I don't know the answer to that because the UFC is clearly going in a different direction than Jon Jones for Ngannou's first title defense. I know sources told me that Derek Lewis has already been offered, and Ngannou was already offered that fight for June. It couldn't come together because Ngannou is back in his native Cameroon for the next few weeks and months. So if Ngannou Lewis does come to fruition, it'll be probably sometime in the summer. Does that leave the door open for Jon Jones to slide in? He's looking for a new management company, new representation to negotiate on his behalf now. It's one of the most interesting stories to me right now, Phil, in MMA. Can that mega fight happen? It doesn't seem like it's going to happen anytime in the next few months, but to me, it would be crazy if the UFC did not at least sit down and explore with Jon Jones what he wants. How can we make this fight happen? That's the question that really should be asked right now. How can we make Ngannou versus Jones happen? It has to happen.
Marc, if you said that on a microphone at T-Mobile Arena, they would boo you out of the place again. You mentioned Francis Ngannou being in his native Cameroon. He's one of 3 African-born champions on the men's side of 8 total champions. Dana White recently told the Bill Simmons podcast he is interested in the not-too-distant future of hosting the first UFC event on African soil. Marc, there are only 5 venues on the continent indoor that hold more than even 11,000 people. What do you think the likelihood is that these logistical gymnastics are worked out and the UFC can realistically hold an event in Africa?
That's another thing I think that really needs to be looked at long and hard because the time is now for a fight in Africa, right? I mean, you have 3 UFC champions from that continent. You only have 1 UFC champion who's from the United States. So, I mean, think about how amazing that is, how far the sport has come, where we're at now in 2021, that there are 3 UFC champions, the best of the best, from and born in the continent of Africa. Of course, Francis Ngannou, Israel Adesanya, Kamaru Usman all hold UFC gold right now. I don't know where it could be, but the UFC has ample resources. There was no arena in Abu Dhabi, Phil, for Fight Island. There was no such arena really there. There is now. But many times the UFC has dealt with the local governments and the local politicians there, and they've figured something out where they can build something or set up some kind of infrastructure for a big event. And why would any place in Africa not want a card with 3 African-born UFC champions? I mean, that would be a historic event. It would be Rumble in the Jungle all over again. I mean, I hope to be there. I'd love to be there for something like that. I hope it does happen. But yeah, logistically, it probably will not be the easiest thing to pull off.
Yeah, and something would have to bend to do it, because the 5 venues I mentioned are in Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, South Africa, not near Nigeria or Cameroon. And yes, we have seen the UFC erect a venue that was outside UFC 112. It's been a minute. I think the easiest route is to find a way to hold an event outdoors. But Mark, you're talking about bending. We saw somebody yield preference this weekend for the main event. Michelle Waterson, a former strawweight champion Invicta, has been somewhat undersized in some, an atomweight champion Invicta, a former strawweight contender, been undersized in the strawweight division in the UFC, moving up to flyweight this weekend. How much does that disadvantage her, and what's in it for her to take a fight that's so far above her natural division?
Another extremely legitimate question, Phil, and that is a question that I would pose to Michelle Waterson and her team. And I think the reason is because there's an opportunity here, and we know what Michelle Waterson's goal has always been, is to become a UFC champion and a mom at the same time. She wanted to be the first. Amanda Nunes is now the first, but it's still a big deal for Michelle Waterson to become UFC champion. She's been working so hard at this for so long. She's the former Invicta champion at 105 pounds. And Marina Rodriguez is a bona fide contender right now. She's won 5 of 6 in the UFC. Her only loss is the former champion Carla Esparza. And I really think that might be the motivation here. Waterson probably knows that a win over Marina Rodriguez could vault her up that strawweight division. Even though the fight's going to take place at flyweight, a win over a top strawweight, even at 125, will get Michelle Waterson higher up in the rankings and put her back in that mix, in that position, especially in main event. It's a short notice fight. There's a good story there. Michelle Waterson's still a fan favorite, so she has that momentum behind her already. So I think that is the motivation. Will it be easy? No. Marina Rodriguez, let's be honest here. She's very good. She's strong, and she will be the favorite in this fight. But Michelle Waterson is still, again, a fan favorite, and they're giving her the opportunity to get back in that contender mix at strawweight, even if the fight's at 125 pounds.
Yeah, it adds a layer of intrigue to a card that has taken an absolute beating in the last couple of weeks. It can't get here soon enough, much like Marc Raimondi can't come back here soon enough. Mark, thank you for answering our legitimate questions today. Great chatting with you.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.